Hello. I'll give it a few minutes here. All right. Perfect. Okay, guys. So, welcome. Today, we are talking about the Cardi B trial. So, right now, if you are not living under a rock, you've probably seen that Cardi B is on trial. Let me just, yeah, let me start. Oh, hi, how are you? Okay. Sorry, I'm setting up all my stuff here. Perfect. Okay, all right. Welcome in, everyone. Today, we're going to talk about the Cardi B trial. We're going to talk about why this is in a civil court and not a criminal court. What is the difference between assault and battery and this issue of whether she touched this lady or not? And who is likely to win the trial based on what we've seen so far. So I'm Jenner Hines. I am a practicing attorney. I've been practicing for over 12 years in this area, and I encourage you to stay tuned and let's learn something here. So the first thing I want to cover is why. Let's start with a summary, actually. So let's for everybody who doesn't know exactly what's going on, let's start there. So currently, Cardi B is involved in a civil trial where she is being sued by Imani Ellis, who's a former security guard who claims that Cardi B assaulted and battered her in 2018 during an incident at a medical office in Beverly Hills. So the plaintiff, Imani, is claiming that. Oh, let me make sure my mic is on. It's on. The plaintiff Amani is claiming that she saw Cardi B. She said something out loud. Cardi B got very angry, got in her face, was pointing in her face, very long, sharp nails, and scratched her in the face. And that Cardi B also spit on her and called her racial slurs. While Cardi B, on the other hand, says that this never happened. Well, not that the incident never happened, but she says that this lady saw her, was recording her. She said some words and they got into like a shouting match, but that she never touched her, she never spat on her, and she never called her any racial slurs. She did admit to calling her the B word, but not any actual racial slurs. So that is what we've gathered so far from the trial. The trial is not over at this point. There's still a lot of testimony to come. But we're going to talk about some key issues that are coming up as things are going on. So the first thing is, why is this in a civil court and not a criminal court, right? So usually when we talk about assault and battery is more commonly a cause of action in criminal circumstances. But the reason why it's not in a criminal court right now is because there was never any police called. From what I've gathered about this case, all of this happened. No police was called. There's no police report. And so the way that a criminal prosecution would happen is it would have to start at some point with some kind of police involvement or investigation. So because it did not go in front of the police for them to investigate and make a decision about whether this is something that goes to the state to be prosecuted, the alternate way that this would come up and this would end up in trial is as a civil matter. So a civil matter comes up when somebody files a lawsuit, right? So you go, you hire a lawyer or you get your paperwork together, you file it with the court, and that's what starts everything. So totally different ways that they start. The other thing is the standard of proof is different. What is the standard of proof? Standard of proof is how you have to show the allegations, how convincing you have to be in order for you to win. So in a criminal court, it would be considered beyond a reasonable doubt is the standard of proof. Beyond a reasonable doubt means that 90 to 99% chance that this happens. So even if there is a doubt, there can be a doubt, but it's like it doesn't make any sense. You're really convinced this definitely happened in the way that the prosecutor is presenting it in order to win in a criminal matter. In a civil matter, it's way lower. So, in a civil matter, the standard of proof is preponderance of the evidence. What that means is there's like a 50% chance. Well, just over 50% chance. So if we're at a 50-50 that this happened, one side is like at a 51, the other is at a 49, then the side with the 51% is going to win. So as you can see, that's a huge difference. It's just more like I'm not 100% sure. You can be, but you don't have to be 100% sure. You just have to feel like, yeah, more likely than not, this actually did happen. So the other thing that's different between civil and criminal is the result at the end of it. So in a criminal case, the penalties are going to be jail time. You can get a fine, you can get probation, you can get house arrest. There are different things, and they all involve at some level like a restriction of freedom or some kind of financial punishment. In the civil side, it's all about money, right? So, I mean, there can be some other things, but for the most part, if you win at a civil trial, what you get is financial compensation for whatever it is that you suffered. So, again, huge difference. In this case, um, I did see at one point that she was asked about that. Why didn't she call the police? For me, as an attorney, I would consider that to be a huge red flag because really you were in an altercation with Cardi B. She spat on you, she scratched your face, and you never call the police. To me, that is a big red flag. But again, we have to go through the process. The law exists the way it exists for a very specific reason. And so we have to hear both sides and make a decision at the end based on the standard of proof to determine what we're going to conclude as a matter of truth. So the next thing that is coming up as far as this trial is concerned is this assault and battery issue and this argument about whether there was a physical touch or no physical touch. So in this case, let me start by defining what a battery is. So a battery is any harmful or offensive touch. Touch, I'm going to use touch in air quotes here because it's not necessarily that you have to physically reach out, sorry, that you have to physically reach out and touch the person. So, what do I mean by that? In this case, the plaintiff is alleging that Cardi B spat on her, right? So, spitting on somebody is not actually touching somebody. However, battery also extends to causing somebody to be touched. So, for example, if I were to take something and throw it and it hits a person, that would be considered a battery. I never made any physical contact with this person. They may be even very far away from me. But because my actions and my intent caused the person to be touched, that would still be considered a battery. So, in this instance as well, she was saying Cardi B was in her face and like doing this with her long nail. And so that is what caused the scratch on her face. So again, she's not saying that Cardi B like tried to punch her or tried to touch her. In this case, you can argue about whether there was an actual intent Because if I'm going like this and I'm telling you to back up, and this happens to touch you, there's a question of, did you intend to touch the person, or it was an accident, or did they walk into it? Like, there's so much. So this is where assault comes in, right? So assault on the street, a lot of people think assault kind of is the same thing as battery, but it's not. An assault has to do more with a threat, right? So yeah, an assault has to do, I'm sorry, I just saw a comment. Hi. An assault has to do with a threat. So an assault is, for example, if I were to take my arm and pretend like I'm going to punch you, let's say I have no intention to punch you, right? Let's say my knuckles are broken and I'm not about to touch you. I'm just trying to scare you a little bit. So if I say, oh, I'm about to knock you out, right? And I take my fist and I pretend I'm going to hit you, that would be considered an assault, even if I had no intention to do it, because what I'm doing is I'm creating a reasonable fear in you. So assault really has to do with the perspective of the victim. If that person is in fear, then we would be able to prove assault even if there's no intent and even if there was no physical contact. So let me look at the comments. I watched a bit of it, but not too sure of the backstory. Yeah. So when this is done, just go back and watch it from the beginning. I kind of explained in the beginning. Basically, Cardi B got into like an altercation with a security guard, and now the security guard is suing her. So that's where we are. Um, so the next thing is about who's going to win, right? That's kind of the big debate on the internet, is like, oh, who's telling the truth? Oh, is this enough? Oh, she's just after money. Like, all of this debate that's out there. As an attorney, I can give you my perspective, and we'll still wait and we'll still see what the result is at the end. From what I see, there are a lot of holes in this case on the plaintiff side. So that's the lady that's suing her. I see a lot of like holes in her argument. First of all, she's changed her story so many times. At one point, saying Cardi B never touched her. At one point, saying that Cardi B um, scratched her face. At another point, she's just changed her story a lot. And for me, that goes a lot to credibility, which the defense is definitely going to be harping a lot on. But credibility is very critical in a case where it's one person's word against another. There are no cameras. Um, and so we're only relying on what you said. And so we have to see who's going to be more credible to see who we actually are going to believe. The other thing is, for me, the no picture of the before is a huge red flag as well. And I'm a defense attorney, so it might be easy for me to see those. But to me, if I got scratched on the face, I'm going to be taking pictures. Or at the very least, whatever pictures I take in that time frame will show that scar. So this happened in 2018. Now we're in 2025. I would expect that there is a series of photos showing the development of the scar. I also would find it to be suspicious, the fact that she had plastic surgery. She said she needed to have plastic surgery. First of all, plastic surgery from like a nail, which I would think if it was that bad, you would be bleeding. Again, you would have called the cops. It's, to me, it's just very suspicious. On the other side, who's like heard about this case, I'm not going to say everybody, but many people who have heard of this case, initial instinct is, oh, Cardi B. I think that if we heard this allegation against Beyonce, most of us would be like, Yeah, I don't know about that. Right? But because the allegations are consistent with what we've seen from Cardi B, we know she's not afraid. She's not afraid of an argument. She's not afraid of the fight. She's very much true to who she is, and she's very much willing to stand up for herself versus, another celebrity who might be more graceful and who might avoid getting into an argument, who might be more mild tempered in that way. People are kind of like, it's consistent. And so they're more likely to believe that she probably did it. At this point, there is still so much that we have to see. There's so much that we don't know. And it's going to be very interesting